Hey, it's Tim, Pickup Truck Plus SUV Talk, and I got another viewer question today. I want to kind of go over some of these details on this, and it deals with these new trucks coming out and what you can actually tow. What we're seeing a lot is a new customer coming to the marketplace. Maybe they haven't towed before. Maybe they want to buy one of these smaller trucks because it's a great little lifestyle truck, and they want to actually go out on the weekends and tow something, go camping. Hallelujah. Big fan of that. Big fan of that. So I wanted to go over it. So in this case, we're talking about the Hyundai Santa Cruz. This is their new compact pickup, right? It's a unibody construction. It's basically an SUV with a bed. And we're also talking about maybe a little bit more about the Ford Maverick as well, because they're kind of in that similar realm, right? So they're really good city trucks, really good kind of rural fixing fence kind of trucks, runabout farm trucks. And they park in the garage easily. You can park them in a parking spot, in a parking garage in downtown. You can parallel park them. You can use them around. So yeah, useful. But now the question is, what happens this summer when you want to go out camping with the family? You want to go rent a camper. So let's talk about this truck, and I'm kind of breaking down what you can tow with it. And I'm going to use this example because I'm actually in my 2022 Toyota Tundra. It's my full-size truck, and I've been towing this camper behind me, which theoretically you could possibly tow with a Hyundai Santa Cruz. Sort of. Let's get those details. So I went on the Hyundai news site and I pulled up specifications on the Santa Cruz because frankly I didn't really know these numbers, because towing is not something that these trucks were really number one buying choice was designed to do, but they can tow. There's nothing wrong with it. So what I found out was that Hyundai offers a front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. So to get the better towing numbers, you need to go all-wheel drive, which makes sense. You're gonna have more power to all the wheels, that kind of stuff. And then you need the maximum tow kit, which comes with trailer brakes, and it comes with the upgraded transmission cooler, right? So got to keep the transmission cool when you're towing. That's a huge part of the drivetrain that can overheat and that causes lots of problems. Trailer brakes are right here. This is it allows you to electronically connect to the trailer and tell how much the brakes in the trailer are going to help you in the truck. And so that's an adjustable gauge. You can add that aftermarket, and then all you're trying to do is just have the truck and the trailer work together as you're slowing down and stopping, and you'll stop more confidently. So they want to make sure you have both of those. And so looking at this, we have with the maximum trailer, with trailer brakes, I have a max towing of 5,000 pounds. I have a maximum payload of 1,609 pounds. Now that payload is going to change. Let's talk about these two things, what they are. And I'll also talk about the gross vehicle weight rating alters by trim, but in the limited, with all-wheel drive and the trailer pack towing, the gross vehicle weight rating is 5,732 pounds. So I just gave you a bunch of terms there. Let's talk about them. Let's hop out here in snowy Nebraska, because it's wintertime, and let's look right here. This is the key data. It's on your door jamb, and it's on the door jamb of every truck you buy. Some SUVs have it as well, and even I think some cars have it too, but it's right here. It says the combined weight of occupants should never exceed 1,400 pounds. And then my gross vehicle weight rating is 7,230 pounds, okay? So on paper, the Hyundai Santa Cruz actually has more payload than the full-size Toyota Tundra. Well, look, so payload is a direct byproduct of taking the curb weight minus the GVWR, which is the gross vehicle weight rating, and you get that payload number, which in simplest terms. But any options you add, like I have a panoramic moonroof, I have a powered seat, I have a TRD off-road package, that's going to reduce payload because I add more options. So this truck has a max payload of 1,800 pounds. We start taking stuff off. So that way, don't look at the Hyundai Santa Cruz, 1,609 pounds, and write it down as that is a fact. You really need to get to the dealership or ask your friends who own one or whatever to have them send you a picture of the door jamb, because that information is important, because payload does affect towing. Okay, so we also talked about gross vehicle weight rating, GVWR. You'll hear it online, they'll talk about GVW. It's the same number except for the letter R, and I'll explain in a minute. It's gross vehicle weight. So it's how much the truck weighs plus all the payload. That's your gross vehicle weight. GVWR, gross vehicle weight rating. The R for rating, it's really complex. The R means that's the maximum rated weight the manufacturer says you can carry. So GVWR is what GVW is what your weight is in real life. GVWR is your max. Okay, simple numbers there. The R just means that's the maximum rating you have. Payload includes everybody you add to the cabin. Anything you add, any cargo, any drinks, whatever. Just understand that the tank of gas is included in the payload number, maximum payload. So don't worry about the gas, but worry about everything you're adding to the truck. So if I add a cooler, I add a generator, I add tents, I add sleeping bags, whatever to this truck, that all gets added and subtracted from my payload number. Basically, your payload number is you're taking everything you have put in there and subtracting it down. This is where towing gets into the question. So like this trailer, for example, it's a 21-foot trailer, 24 with the tongue, has a GVWR of 6,995 pounds, but it has a UBWR of 4,738 pounds. So you're going, wait a minute, what are those differences? UBWR is basically your curb weight. This is how much the camper actually weighs. GVWR is your gross vehicle weight rating. That's your blankets, your towels, your water. They call it in camping world, they call it the wet weight. It's everything that you add weight to the camper. Water, sewer, all that kind of stuff, that adds weight. That's your maximum weight. So on paper, the Hyundai Santa Cruz has more payload than this truck does, and it can tow up to 5,000 pounds. So the base curb weight is 4,738 pounds. So theoretically, the Hyundai Santa Cruz could tow this camper. Sure. Let's get to a couple of reasons about that. But another thing we need to talk about is payload. So payload actually is impacted back here as well. When we put the ball in here and we put the tongue on top of the ball, we're going to transfer this tongue weight to the truck. We're going to take that weight and add it to the truck. So in most cases, unless the camper says something different, some of these lightweight aluminum campers do say something differently, you take about 10% of the trailer's weight and you subtract that from the payload. So I always look at GVWR when I do this because I want to make sure I'm within a safe range. So in this case, I have 639 pounds, 6,395 pounds of GVWR. But really, if I'm going to transfer weight, I'm going to say it's about 640 pounds, right? And then my hitch, I got to add my hitch in there too. I have a weight distributing hitch, weighs about 50 pounds. So let's say I'm going to add 700 pounds of payload to the truck when I put on this trailer, okay? And so that will impact the payload number. So if I have 1,600 pounds of payload in the Hyundai Santa Cruz, I take 700 pounds against it. That leaves me 900 pounds to put stuff in the bed, to put people in the cabin, to add whatever I want as far as food, drinks, whatever, inside the cabin. That's how that configuration would work. So, as I said to this viewer, I said, theoretically, you can do it. Now, I would not tow that with the Santa Cruz. The reason why is I always look at the gross vehicle weight rating. So the GVWR is 6,395 pounds. And interestingly enough, I want to also know the gross combined weight rating, which I'm actually following up the Hyundai right now and hopefully put the information on the screen to get that number because they don't state that number. And gross combined weight rating is the trailer and the truck. You basically take the GVWR of both, add them together, and you want to stay below that number. So gross vehicle weight rating, payload, gross combined weight rating, those all are numbers you need to know. My theory is in that Hyundai is probably going to be about 12,000, 13,000 pounds, but I'll get information down below. The reason I wouldn't tow this camper though with the Hyundai Santa Cruz, and this is the important part, is the height. And the height all the way around and the length, right? And so what you have, and let me go to the front here, and you see this a lot with semis and different things like that, but you know, we have quite a bit of weight, or quite a bit of height above this cabin to the top of that camper. And the Santa Cruz, if I recall, is probably about the height of this mirror. So I have a lot of height there, right? And you know, if I'm driving down the interstate and I'm in Florida and I'm doing 60 on was it I-20 or I-75 down there, and there's no wind and it's a sunny day, yeah, theoretically the Hyundai Santa Cruz will pull that camper just fine. The problem is, let's say something happens. Let's say you start driving faster. Let's say the wind kicks up. Let's say it starts snowing, like in my case, or it starts raining, or the weather events aren't quite there. Now you have this high profile camper very high profile camper on a vehicle that is much lower. So I have all this wind that's gonna hit the top of this camper because it's not gonna get deflected off the top of my cabin, because remember, the Santa Cruz is much smaller. And I have this high profile on the top, on the side, so the wind's gonna move this around. The fact of the matter is, the unibody construction of the Santa Cruz is great. And there's no problem with that, but the vehicle isn't that long and it's not that heavy. You are going to be pushed around by the wind. I get pushed around by the wind with a half-ton truck. Most guys will do a 3/4 ton. Actually, they'll do a 1 ton with campers, get the extra wheel with the dually to avoid being pushed around in the wind. You will get pushed around a lot with the Hyundai Santa Cruz, and that is the big fear, right? So you're at the campsite, you got there all right, the truck made it, maybe a little white knuckle there because you don't have that much of engine, that much horsepower, that much torque. You get there, you're fine, and then you got to go home and the weather's not quite right. So that is the main concern. The salesman, if they're most salesmen or most renters, will eyeball your truck and say, yeah, you probably can't tow it or whatever. But theoretically you could, if the camper's empty, if you have no water in it, if you're gonna go on a sunny day where it's gonna be no wind. But for most people, when you tow, towing is about confidence. And you really don't want to have the stress of towing that big of a camper with that small of a truck. It really comes down to the stress level, the white knuckle. Towing can be very stressful. It really can. And so just because on paper it looks like you probably can tow it, in reality, that's why most guys and girls and gals, whatever, they go with a bigger truck because they want more curb weight. They want a longer wheelbase, they want a bigger engine, they want more torque, because they know that getting to your destination safely, getting there not stressed, is really worth the money for the additional cost of doing the heavier truck. Now, if you're gonna look at, say, a pop-up camper, one of those little small monopod campers, yeah, Santa Cruz is fine for that. You can do that. You just be aware that, you know, you'll want to probably add a weight stripping hitch, you'll want to have some experience towing, and you'll want to watch the weather. You know, really windy day, probably time to go in and spend the night or go get a cup of coffee, wait it out a little bit, because like I said, towing can be stressful. And when I go camping, I want to get there, pop a beer, sit back, relax. Last thing I want to do is be stressed out about getting my wife and my kids to the campground safely and having a truck that I'm concerned about towing that distance with. So there you go. Hope you found that helpful. For more videos, check it over here. Website down below. Again, tim@pickuptrucktalk.com for more questions. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you down the road.